Juan Señor, partner at Innovation Consulting Media Group in London. You have been talking about, in fact, all the real big topics on publishing that are important nowadays. If you had to choose three of them, like what would they be, and can you tell in an abstract of what you have been telling a few minutes ago at the Mediafacts Publishers Conference?
Sure. I mean, perhaps three at the moment. The first one would be the rise and the need for publishers to embrace native advertising or branded content. The second, indeed, would be the fact that we need to charge for content on digital devices, especially mobile devices. We need to bring back value out of the volume business that publishing has become. And the last one is that print is eternal. It will never die. But print needs to change, and print will become the haute couture product, while digital will become the prêt-à-porter. But no medium has ever replaced another medium in the history of communications, and this digital revolution is fantastic. Our audience has increased 100-fold. The problem is that our revenue has decreased 10-fold around the world, in many places even more. But now we're beginning to see a way around it, to see a way to indeed make significant amounts of money out of digital, so digital sustains the publishing business, with the print magazine or the print newspapers still becoming the flagship, the haute couture product for still a while to come, a decade or beyond in many cases.
Okay, well, when we dig one level deeper, let's return to native advertising. You have been telling that it's a big growth market. Can you elaborate a little bit more on it?
Yes, native advertising is a phenomenon that has really swept the publishing industry throughout the world. Is a massive multi-billion-dollar business already in the United States. It's already here in Europe, and it's something that you have to get right. It's very dangerous because it can compromise the prestige, the reputation of the brand if you just hand over your platform to people who are trying to sell goods to an audience. But native advertising is how advertisers are trying to tell stories that fit in with their commercial agenda within publishing structures. So what's happened in digital is that pop-up ads, display ads, suck. They've never worked, and they will never work. Hardly anybody clicks on those ads. So for people to pay just based on CPMs, on eyeballs, clicking on those ads really is a very inefficient and really not a working method. That's been widely demonstrated. So this has been substituted by advertisers telling stories. In the old days, it used to be called paid content or paid articles or paid copy. But now it's been done in a much cleverer way by advertisers. Perhaps and another manifestation of that branded content is what Red Bull, for instance, is doing, where they themselves become the story. They themselves take an amazing adventure or adrenaline-driven event, and they brand it and they call it their own event. That's branded content. That's native advertising. So in their case, they don't need a publishing platform. They themselves become the publishing platform. Yeah. So advertisers want to do this more and more, and it's up to publishers to give them a platform that indeed clearly delineates what is editorial and what is commercial. But they want to be with your audience with this kind of new format of storytelling, and indeed, as a publisher, you can charge a premium for it.
Yeah, and should publishers write those stories, help those advertisers writing those stories, and as publishers themselves, or should the advertisers write it and then check what they have been writing before it is published?
Never should an editorial team of a magazine be involved in producing content for an advertiser. It should be separate, totally separate teams.
Because BuzzFeed, for instance, sorry I interrupt you, but BuzzFeed is doing it for their advertiser, and they say that it is hugely successful.
Correct, but it's a separate team. It's a team that in theory does not do any editorial content that's independent. And that's how the Atlantic Monthly is doing it, that's how some other publishers are doing it. They create their own separate team that does content for an advertiser, but they are not people who are on staff as editorial independent journalists of the magazine or of the newspaper. Yeah. That is an acceptable way of doing it. The problem is when you allow an advertiser to indeed mix the message between editorial and commercial. That is extremely dangerous and something that publishers should not do, because at the end of the day, the trust would be broken with the reader. If the reader is reading something and at the end of it he finds out that he was being sold something, as opposed to
Yeah.
being told a story. So it's a big difference between being told and being sold about something. And that's important that publishers understand, get right from the very beginning, while at the same time embracing this new format of advertising and publishing.
Yes. One last thing, as Steve Jobs would say it, by the way. No, paid content. What are you a believer in paywalls or more in micropayments? In Holland we have Blendel that sells individual articles belonging to different newspapers or other brands, and on an individual basis outside the brands of the publishers themselves. And well, this is a kind of a micropayment method, but not by the publishing brands themselves. What do you believe in as the most efficient method for online monetization?
I believe that there isn't one single method. I think it needs to be done bespoke, case by case. I think there will be a plethora of ways for us to sell our content. The same way that there's a plethora of ways for us to buy content, buy Coca-Cola, buy a product. These are really, we're talking about distribution methods for us to sell our goods. That should come after one has really asked the question, do I have something worth paying for? And a lot of people are asking us, should I charge or not charge? I say, well, the method is immaterial. That comes after the fact. First, do you have content that is worth paying for? And often the realization is that there really isn't that much anymore, because we are gone into a game of commoditized content, commoditized information and storytelling. So a publisher has to first take a step back, understand what is worth paying for, what isn't, and then therefore figure out the way to charge for it. But there isn't one single method. The most prevalent method that seems to be the one most embraced by publishers, especially from the newspaper industry, is the meter model. The meter model whereby after a number of articles you're asked to pay. So it could be 20 articles, 20 pieces of information per month. Through cookies, it identifies you've consumed that much, so it asks for payment after registration. That is a very workable, viable method. It's not too intrusive, you don't lose a lot of audience, and there's already proven data that 3% of unique visitors to a website, monthly unique visitors, will indeed immediately convert and become paying digital subscribers. So one can quickly do the math and figure out if 3% of my unique visitors monthly were to pay, say, 10 euros a month, that's how much revenue I could begin to charge out of a meter model. And then it's just a fan strategy. You want to fan it out and figure out different entry points. You want to have people that are access all areas. You want to have people who just consume through micropayments. You want to have people who have double year subscriptions and so on. We're back to the game of managing subscriptions that are creative. But certainly the good old days of selling somebody an annual subscription or expecting him to come to the kiosk on a monthly, weekly basis and buy our titles, that's gone. That's gone. Now it's we need to really explore these new methods.